Irashaimase. Hello and welcome to Fataris' Kitchen. I'm your host, Chef Fataris. It's time once again for Shoot 'em Up Saturday, and on the menu this week we have MEGABLAST, an obscure Taito classic. What kind of taste will it have? Let's get cooking and find out. From developer Taito, MEGABLAST released to arcades in 1989. This has been an interesting one to dive into, as I feel it's a unique shoot 'em up that's kind of odd coming from a developer like Taito. It is very obscure, as up until this Arcade Archive release, it was only ever re-released one time as part of a Taito collection for the PlayStation 2 that only released in Japan. With that said, is this a title that I would recommend? Only for hardcore Taito fans that are interested in experiencing maybe a title that they haven't had the chance to play outside of emulation. And overall, I would describe this at best as a fairly mediocre shoot 'em up that has some serious issues. So we'll get to some of those throughout the course of the gameplay, but let's dive in by putting some credits into the machine. So first off, we are given this a scene when we enter credits in of the two pilots, Dawson and Bogey. So there's this real quick story that's shown in your post-title screen. That's basically, the summary is, aliens have been kidnapping the women of Earth, and we're using all the technology of Earth in these fighters called MEGABLAST to rescue them. So this is MEGABLAST, both the ship itself and the game. It's a horizontal scrolling shoot 'em up that does have some neat elements to it. So you always have 4 options surrounding your ship facing in each of the cardinal directions. And initially they'll have this lightning shot, and then throughout the course of the gameplay we potentially have the ability to change that up. Throughout the course of the stages we'll occasionally come across these orbs, and those orbs will be various colors. So the blue orbs match our base shot, the lightning shot, this one here. And if we touch those with our ship or whichever corner we go and touch, it will power up that particular option, up to level 3. There are other orbs, like this green one for example, will give us a shield. If we pick up the same color orbs, that's what powers up the options. And at this point you can see that the green orb gave me a much smaller shield on the bottom one than it did on the front. So that basically means that particular option is at a much lower power level. Kind of a neat system overall, but it's not without its flaws. It's kind of similar to a game that I recently reviewed. I feel one of the big problems this game has is it doesn't have a very good mix of the power-ups. There are quite a few in the game, but some of them you'll encounter very, very, very infrequently. So we already find ourselves at the first boss. There are code names for the bosses themselves, which is kind of interesting. One hit and you die, you are knocked all the way back to base power, but where we still have all 4 options, that's not that big of a problem. So this boss is relatively straightforward. You just have the weak point that opens up on its shins, destroy that, and that's it for that giant robot, which you will see again later in the game if you continue to play it. And we find ourselves on stage 2. So some of the other power-ups we could potentially get. It's possible to get a flame or laser power-up that's the color red. There's a neat ricochet shot, which comes in useful. Oh, sweet, here's a red one. There's a neat ricochet shot, which does come in handy for the stages it's featured in. There's also, on stage 3, one group of enemies that will drop yellow and purple power-ups. And that's the only time in the game you'll see those 2 colors. The yellow ones give you a homing shot, or a homing missile rather, and the purple one, it almost feels like an incomplete shot, as it looks and behaves the same way as the thunder shot, just with a different color. So that kind of brings me to some of the technical problems that this game has. Oh, and if you get a different color power-up, it just changes you back to that shot. Since blue is the most common, you'll most likely that'll happen all the time anyway. So that kind of highlights some of the technical, or a technical issue that the game seems to have. There's also insane amount of slowdown with like the game itself, especially if you play with the rapid fire turned on in the emulation. It just brings the game to its knees. Like right here, the boss is dead, but because I'm continuing to rapid fire, it's just like delaying this death scene painfully so. And you'll kind of see that just throughout the course of the gameplay. Even if you don't have rapid fire turned on, there's still tons of slowdown all over the place. That's definitely one of the big problems. So there you have it. That's MEGABLAST served up for your enjoyment. That said, let's talk about some of those problems that I had. So normally this game is 2-player simultaneous. However, the slowdown is so bad. Let's go ahead and let this boss die. The slowdown is so bad that it was not possible to play in 2-player and really be able to show off the game. In fact, in stage 6, like playtesting it with 2-player, we got this to happen. Not just once, but multiple times and in different parts of the stage. That's right, totally broke the game. It's kind of incredible. Jumping back to this game itself, here's that one group of enemies that has the yellow homing shots, and that's the only time we're going to have that option to get that power-up. So the game is in 2-player, especially if you're using rapid fire, like 100% unplayable. It's just not a good idea to even try, like with the way that the performance is. But there are some other neat elements in it. In addition to just that neat option with the whole power-up scheme, there are all these neat mini-bosses, this one included, but there were a couple that are included that are characters from other like title games, which is really fun to see in this kind of a shoot 'em up. It was one of those things where when I was first playing through it, I was like, oh, that's really neat. But overall, yeah, this game is only one that I can recommend for the hardcore title fans that are looking to experience a more unique title in their library. As far as the minus flavors, so the big one, of course, is performance, but then you've also got, I've had some issues with the hitbox being a little on the weird side, the lack of power-up and power-up variety, and it just seems like even as far as the design of the game, they had plans to put other power-ups in there, but those plans fell by the wayside. And then overall, the gameplay variety itself does get a little bit stale. There's no special scoring, and really, from a replayability standpoint, I don't feel like that's really there. But as far as on the plus side is concerned, I do appreciate some of the ideas that were like presented here. We have some interesting like gameplay with the various options. And I do appreciate just how obscure and, well, in a lot of ways, bizarre that this title is. So, that'll just about wrap it up for this week's episode of Shoot 'em Up Saturday. As always, I want to thank you so much for joining us this week. I hope you have a wonderful week yourself, and I look forward to seeing you again next time.